Now, Wednesday's Economic Roundup with Ken Schortgen of thedailyeconomist.com.
Welcome back to the Angel Clark Show. I have on the line with me Ken Schortgen. Ken joins us once a week to talk all things economics. He is the National Finance Examiner for Examiner.com. He has the website, thedailyeconomist.com. And now, Ken, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I get to ask you my favorite question of the week. What's going down in economic Rooftown, dude, man?
Oh, what do we got? We've got major bank CEOs quitting. We have China's soon-to-be takeover of the IMF and the London gold fix. We have Greece, who has now said that they are not responsible for any debt. What could be wrong in the economy right now?
Oh man.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride the last 2 weeks, and we'll start off with China. China came out last week, and they and Russia have now officially put out the petro yuan. 10 days ago, actually probably not that much, June 9th, China and Russia officially now will have oil purchases in yuan. So Russia, which is the largest producer of oil in the world, will only sell oil in yuan, no longer accepting dollars. So the petro yuan and the petrodollar now are front and center, both pseudo-reserve currencies. But it got expanded today because Russia and China just settled on a new agreement just today where natural gas will also be sold in yuan and not dollars.
Oh, wow. Really?
So oil and natural gas energy, we're talking 40% of all the natural gas and oil that goes to Europe it comes from Russia. So that you're going to see Russia, the Europe divest a lot of their dollar reserves and holdings so that they can buy yuan, so they can buy oil and natural gas from Russia. So you're forcing a de-dollarization. You're forcing as we've talked about many times, a de facto ending of the reserve currency. You don't need a Bretton Woods if most of the world simply just doesn't buy dollars or use dollars.
Have we seen any repercussions in the marketplace in this yet?
Not to the fullest extent. However, Janet Yellen had a FOMC announcement today, and she sort of threw Bernanke and Greenspan under the bus and criticized them back in 2004 to 2006 why they didn't raise interest rates sooner before the 2007-2008 credit crisis and then the housing bubble. So she started accusing her former predecessors of bubbles, even though the fact that she has yet, in more than 9 months of jawboning about it, she hasn't raised rates either. So she's intimating they're going to raise rates quarter point twice before the end of the year, but we'll have to see about that.
Now,
let's say the dollar dropped 100 basis points, and the stock market lost all its gains. So the markets really don't know what's going on.
how is this going to affect the average person?
The average person, well, right now we've still got a deflationary spiral in hard assets, but we've got rising inflation because, remember we've talked about many times the BRICS nations, that coalition of emerging markets that have sort of like set themselves apart from the Eurozone and the West. Well, Jim Willie coined a new term, the BLICs.
The BLICs? And
the BLICs are a completely different set. They include the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Belgium. These are the places, these are the banking spots where everybody who's dumping all their dollar reserves in their treasuries, these are the 5 places that are picking them up. That way they don't come back to the Federal Reserve of the United States, increase the money supply, and bring hyperinflation. But we're going to have to see a certain point where the world is no longer buying treasuries, and if the world isn't buying treasuries, then who's going to buy the U.S. debt, and the government can't print more money.
Oh, yeah.
So you're going to see a spiral there. But we also, of course, have Greece. But we're going to get to Greece in a second because this is China, the China segment.
Okay.
And one of the other things that happened over the weekend was a team from the IMF arrived in Beijing on June 14th to assess whether the yuan should be included in the special drawing rights basket of currencies. So the yuan, and now the important thing to remember this about the IMF. IMF is one of those world banks, it's similar to the AIIB where it was supposed to be for development, but it ended up being just a way for the U.S. to impose draconian austerity on every country that needed a bailout.
Yeah, basically.
But Congress has not appropriated money for the IMF for over 2 years. There's only been one country that's actually put money into the IMF, and that's China. And if China is the one who's funding the IMF, who do you think is directing policies?
I would go with China.
Yeah, it's not the U.S. anymore. Them that supplies the gold makes the rules. So China is going to get on the SDR basket, but they're not going to be part of the SDR and part of the West simply to cave in to work with the United States. The real purpose behind the China getting involved in the IMF is China eventually wants their currency to float and be used worldwide. We already have the petro yuan that's popped up. We have the Silk Road, the Belt and Road Initiative, where China has already said that 40% of the entire global economy, 4.4 billion people, are going to be using bilateral trade, their own currencies, bypassing the dollar as a middleman. And the letters of credit that is going to be used in these transactions is going to eventually be gold-backed. Okay? So we've got China creating its own free trade zone across 40% of the world, which includes the largest populations, India, China, Japan, a lot, the Far East.
Yeah.
We have China getting in the IMF, which is here's the purpose behind the getting in the IMF. They're going to use the IMF as justification to expand their bond issuance. Now, to print money in this fiat currency system, the U.S. Will create treasury bonds, and then they'll sell the treasury bonds to the Federal Reserve, who then sells them out to the general public. But when they sell those treasury bonds, then the Fed prints a certain amount of money, gives that money to the government, and the government spends it. That's how you create money. Create bonds first, and then you create money to back the bonds, to monetize the bonds.
Okay.
China does not have a global bond system. They have more internal. Almost all their debt is internal. So to expand the yuan use around the world, they need to sell bonds around the world so that they can monetize money. They're going to use the IMF as justification to do this. Because if they're part of the IMF's currency basket, which currently has four, I believe, currencies, the yen, the dollar, the euro, and the Swiss franc, they're going to be the fifth. And so if they're part of the IMF SDR, they're going to be able to justify having bond markets all around the world. Thus, their currency is going to really start saturating the system, and the dollar is going to be used less and less and less.
Hold on to that thought, Ken. We have to step away for just a moment. The Angel Clark Show will return. More with Ken Schortgen coming up. Welcome back to the Angel Clark Show. I have on the line with me Ken Schortgen. Ken is the National Finance Examiner for Examiner.com. He has the website thedailyeconomist.com. And Ken joins us once a week to talk all things economics. Ken, I want to thank you so much for sticking around, and I'm going to let you dive right back into the information because I know you've got a ton of stuff you want to share with us and a very limited time frame to do it in.
Okay. One last thing about China. Like I said, this has been a 10-day, 2-week whirlwind. It's like everything is coming into place. For the first time in history, in the 112-year running of the London Gold Fix, London decided to invite the first Asian entity to sit on the committee and determine gold prices. The Bank of China is now part of the London Gold Fix.
Really?
They are already the world's largest physical market at the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And with Deutsche Bank leaving and a number of other, J.P. Morgan pulling out and Goldman, London is seeing the writing on the wall and realizing that the future of price discovery is going to come from the Far East. And so by bringing China in, how long until the real value of the paper spot price gets tied into the real value of physical?
Oh, gosh,
Because
I don't
right
know,
now,
because China's just they're holding on to a ton of gold, right? Well, more than a ton, obviously. A lot.
Oh, China's got by insider source estimates 30,000 tons.
Wow.
To use that in comparative, back in the 1960s when we actually did our one single audit of the Fort Knox, we had 8,700 tons. China's almost got 4 times that now.
Wow. That is crazy.
But they're not going to announce that unless it suits their purpose. So right now, where the IMF is over there talking with them, to get part of the SDR, they got to prove collateral and the stability of their currency. So my guess is you're going to see them announce that they have. The last announcement by China said they had like 1,700 tons of gold. You're going to see them announce between 3,000 and 8,000. They're probably not going to go more than the U.S., even though they do have it, but they're going to go more than Germany, which is in second place at 4,500.
Yeah.
So you're going to see China do that. Then you're going to see gold go nuts. So we're about to see massive breakouts, especially once the COMEX no longer dictates spot price. So that's a really important thing coming on. Now, Greece. Greece, of course, missed their IMF payment last week, and they're moving towards a deadline of this weekend. Well, going back and forth between the IMF, Greece, the Troika, and that forced austerity, compromise, they're coming up to nothing. So a Greek debt committee today decided to go full tilt Monty and announced they just declared that all debt that they have to the Troika, $380 billion, is illegal, illegitimate, and odious.
Wait, can they do that?
What they're saying is that they should not have to pay this debt because they well, it's a great question because how should I say this? They got into the Eurozone by falsehoods. Back when Greece was brought into the Eurozone, it's been proven and validated in public evidence that Goldman Sachs cooked their books and fudged their accounting numbers and their debt numbers to allow them to get into the Eurozone. So they should have never been in the Eurozone to begin with, according to the Maastricht Charter. Then we know after 2008, after the credit crisis, Greece ended up getting a Troika and European Commission forced technocrat, Papandreou, over their country. And what Papandreou did was he stole all their assets, sold off a lot of their national property like islands and that, and then raised the debt and sold more sovereign bonds. So this was not an elected official by the people. This was a technocrat by the Troika. In essence, the Troika goes in, forces up their debt, and now wants them to have to pay it back. Doesn't this sound like Iceland?
It does, actually.
And what did Iceland do? Iceland said, forget this. We're going to jail the bankers. We're going to ignore and default on the debt. They went through a tough recession for about 18 months, and now Iceland is one of the top out of the European continent area. They're one of the fastest growing economies because this is what recessions do. They allow bad, risky banks to fail. They allow toxic debt to dissolve out of the system, so then you can build a foundation on good money and start growing again. But the bailout and TARP and QE never allowed the toxic debts to get out of the system. It never allowed the bad banks to fail. So now this thing is blowing up to massive proportions. And one of the writings on the wall is 10 days ago or so, the 2 CEOs of Deutsche Bank, they had 2 co-CEOs, they both quit.
Really?
Now, why is this important? Deutsche Bank is the number 1 derivatives holder in the world, $75 trillion in derivatives. Guess what a number of those are tied to? Greek sovereign debt.
Oh, my.
So if Greece defaults, it triggers between $1 and $75 trillion of derivatives, which causes Deutsche Bank to instantly collapse, which then, of course, starts dominoes on French banks, British banks, and American banks. The dominoes will fall.
Oh, my goodness. I mean,
so now you know why this little tiny country of Greece and their podunk $386 billion worth of debt has the ability, just like Lehman, just like Bear Stearns, to crush the entire system.
Yeah, it really sounds like it does. It sounds, I would say, just a little bit intimidating.
Oh, absolutely. Now, on a side note, well, China and Greece, they're in play, and this is something everybody should pay attention to because eventually it'll deal with the dollar, the euro, gold, and of course the Chinese yuan as it builds up. But two other notes: Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed a bill on Friday that the state of Texas is now going to build its own gold and silver bullion depository and demand back and repatriate $1 billion worth of gold stored in the Federal Reserve.
Oh.
Yeah, the states are getting ready for a gold-backed monetary system. We already had, 2 years ago, we had Utah, Arizona, Montana, Oklahoma, and Virginia allow for gold and silver as legal tender in paying off of debts.
Ken Schortgen, I am hearing the music cue us out. I want to thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Go to Ken's website, thedailyeconomist.com. The Angel Clark Show will return.